welcome to our deep dive all about karma. You sent us a really interesting audio lecture from a Buddhist scholar.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and we're going to unpack some of the most interesting points from it.
Sounds good.
It seems like you're really interested in like the nitty-gritty of how karma works. Not just like the simple what goes around comes around, but like the real in-depth Buddhist perspective.
Right?
So get ready to explore how your intentions can like shape your future.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the surprising nuance in acts of generosity and even what Tibetan Buddhists believe happens after we die. Expert speaker is here with us to like break it all down.
Happy to be here.
I got to say, some of this stuff already has me scratching my head.
Yeah, it's true. Karma can be a pretty complex topic,
Yeah.
especially when you look at it through like the lens of Buddhist philosophy. You know, in the West, it's often simplified to just like a cause and effect system, but it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah, I was really intrigued by the scholar's emphasis on intention. It's not just about like the things we do, but like the why behind it. I actually struggle with this sometimes. Like the other day I was helping a friend move, but honestly I was mostly doing because I felt obligated, not out of genuine kindness. So like, does that even count as a good deed, karmically speaking?
That's a great question, and it gets right to the heart of the Buddhist teachings on karma. The scholar we're talking about emphasizes how important it is to like cultivate a virtuous character. And that means like really paying attention to your intentions. So yeah, even though you helped your friend, the karmic result might not be the same as if you had acted out of like pure compassion.
So it's like the universe can see through my fake generosity.
Not exactly. It's not really about some cosmic scorekeeper judging our every move.
Okay.
Buddhists believe that our intentions shape our internal state. Like acting out of obligation can create this subtle feeling of resentment, but
Yeah,
genuine kindness leads to joy and connection.
right.
These inner states then go on to influence our future actions and even our experiences.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about our outward actions, but also about how those actions shape who we are on the inside.
Precisely.
Which actually reminds me of the concept of storehouse consciousness that the scholar talks about.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting part of the lecture.
Oh yeah, the Yogacara school of Mahayana Buddhism. It's a really fascinating idea.
Yeah, it's this idea that all our experiences, even the ones we've completely forgotten about, leave these imprints on our consciousness, like a cosmic hard drive storing all our karmic data.
I love that analogy. The scholar compares it to that lingering scent of something that was once in a drawer, even after you've taken it out.
Oh, yeah.
These karmic scents from our past actions and thoughts shape our habits, tendencies, and even our emotional reactions.
That's so interesting. It makes me think about those times when I react in a way that even surprises myself. It's like, where did that come from? Maybe it's like those karmic traces bubbling up from the storehouse consciousness.
Yeah, that's a fascinating possibility. You know, it also connects to our modern understanding of habits and conditioning in psychology. A lot of therapists help their clients identify and transform negative patterns that come from past experiences. And that actually aligns really well with this Buddhist concept of purifying the storehouse consciousness through mindfulness and ethical conduct.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about like passively accepting our karmic baggage, but actually working to clean out those smelly socks in our mental drawers.
Exactly. And that leads us to the three pillars of virtue that Buddhists focus on cultivating Shila Samadhi and Dana.
Yeah, the scholar mentioned those. Can you remind me what they actually mean?
Of course. Think of them as like guidelines for living a virtuous life, which then naturally generates positive karma.
Well,
So Shila is all about ethical conduct, like speaking truthfully, acting with kindness, and cultivating self-control.
okay, that one seems pretty straightforward. What about the others?
Samadhi refers to meditation, specifically about cultivating focus and mindfulness. By training our minds, we gain clarity and insight, which helps us make wiser choices and act with more awareness.
And Dana is generosity.
Yes, but even generosity has its nuances in Buddhist thought. The scholar emphasizes that it's not just about giving things away, it's about cultivating a genuine spirit of generosity and really understanding the impact of our giving.
Wait, so is there like a right and wrong way to be generous?
It's not really about being right or wrong, it's more about understanding the subtle factors that can influence the karmic results of our actions. Like giving to a virtuous person is considered to be more beneficial than giving to someone who might misuse your generosity.
Interesting. It's like karmic investing. You want to put your generosity where it will have the most positive impact.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, the intention behind the act is really important. Giving to impress others or gain something in return won't generate the same kind of positive karma as giving out of genuine compassion and a desire to help others.
So even seemingly simple actions like giving a gift can have layers of karmic complexity.
Definitely. Yeah, it really does make you stop and think.
Totally. And speaking of things that make you think, the scholar goes into some pretty heavy stuff about the bardo, the Tibetan Buddhist idea of like what happens between death and rebirth.
Right.
That's some mind-bending stuff.
It really challenges like our usual ideas about life and death. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, death isn't the end. It's a transition into this thing called the bardo, where we experience all these visions and challenges based on like our past karma.
Okay, I gotta admit, I'm a little freaked out and fascinated all at the same time.
Oh.
But like, what actually happens in the bardo?
It's described as this multi-stage journey. First, there's this dissolution of the elements, where like our physical senses start to fade away.
Okay.
And then we encounter this brilliant, clear light, which represents the true nature of mind.
And then it gets really trippy, right? The scholar mentions something about peaceful and wrathful deities appearing.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that these deities aren't seen as like external gods. They're more like projections of our own mind.
Oh, okay.
They symbolize different aspects of our consciousness, both positive and negative.
So it's like our own minds are creating this cosmic drama after we die.
Basically. And how we navigate this drama is influenced by our past karma. Like, if we've cultivated awareness and mindfulness during our life, we're more likely to recognize these visions as like illusions and not get caught up in them.
But if we haven't been so mindful, what happens then?
Well, then the bardo can be like a much more challenging experience. You might experience intense fear or confusion and end up drawn toward a rebirth that reflects your negative karmic tendencies.
Oh, wow. So you're saying our actions now can actually impact what we experience after death. I'm starting to really understand why intention is so important in Buddhism.
It's a powerful reminder that the choices we make now have these ripple effects that go way beyond our current life.
Wow.
But there's good news, too. The Tibetan Book of the Dead also gives us some guidance on how to navigate the bardo skillfully.
Okay.
It says that even in death, there's still a chance for liberation.
Wait, are you saying we can actually choose our next rebirth?
That's the belief. With enough awareness and practice, people can recognize the clear light, avoid getting caught in those illusions, and even influence the circumstances of their next rebirth.
Whoa, talk about taking responsibility for your life.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's what I don't get. The scholar also talks about emptiness, this idea that ultimately everything, including karma, doesn't really have like inherent existence.
Right.
So doesn't that contradict the whole idea of karma having consequences?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of the Madhyamaka school of Mahayana Buddhism, which emphasizes the two truths, the relative truth and the ultimate truth.
Okay, break it down for me.
So the relative truth is basically our everyday experience of cause and effect. We see how our actions have consequences, and in that sense, karma is very real.
Right.
But the ultimate truth points to like the deeper nature of reality, which is emptiness, or the lack of inherent existence in all things.
Emptiness. So are you saying karma is an illusion?
It's a little more nuanced than that. Think of it like a mirage in the desert. From far away, it looks like water. But as you get closer, you realize it's just an illusion created by light and heat.
So is karma like a mirage? It seems real, but ultimately it's not.
It's a helpful analogy. Karma is real in the sense that we experience its effects, but it's not like a solid, independent thing. It arises dependently on other factors and ultimately doesn't have a fixed inherent nature.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So like on a practical level, how does understanding these two truths change how we approach karma?
It encourages us to shift our focus away from trying to meticulously calculate our karmic balance sheet and move towards cultivating wisdom and realizing emptiness.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that clinging to fixed concepts, including this idea of like a solid, unchanging self, is what perpetuates suffering.
So it's not about obsessing over every little action and its consequence, but about cultivating a deeper understanding of like the nature of reality.
Exactly. And that's where those three types of karma come in positive, negative, and non-producing.
Right.
Positive and negative karma are pretty straightforward. But this non-producing karma is really interesting. It refers to actions that are performed with a liberated mind, a mind that's free from clinging and delusion. These actions don't contribute to further karmic accumulation.
So it's like reaching a level of wisdom where your actions don't create that same ripple effect.
Precisely. You're acting from a place of clarity and compassion without being attached to the outcomes. These actions are still beneficial, but they don't bind you to that cycle of samsara.
It's like breaking free from the karmic hamster wheel.
Yeah.
This is all so insightful, but how do we actually cultivate this liberated mind? It sounds kind of impossible.
It's definitely a journey, not a destination. But the scholar does offer some practical advice. It starts with becoming more mindful of our intentions. Like before we act, we can pause and ask ourselves, what's motivating me right now? Is it greed, anger, or delusion? Or is it kindness, compassion, and wisdom?
It's like a mini meditation before every action.
You could think of it that way. By becoming more aware of our motivations, we can make the choice to act in ways that create positive karma and contribute to our well-being and the well-being of others.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about those times when we inevitably mess up? When we act out of anger or selfishness?
Remember, even negative karma isn't like a fixed punishment. It's simply the natural consequence of our actions.
Yeah.
The key is to learn from our mistakes and try to do better next time.
So it's not about beating ourselves up for our imperfections, but using them as opportunities for growth.
Exactly. Buddhist practice emphasizes forgiveness and self-compassion. We all make mistakes, but the important thing is to recognize them, learn from them, and keep moving forward on the path of cultivating virtue and wisdom.
This has been so helpful. But the scholar also mentions that the fear of death is rooted in our clinging to the idea of self. Can you explain that a little more?
Sure, Buddhism challenges this idea that there's a solid, unchanging self that exists independently of everything else.
Okay.
Our body's thoughts and emotions are constantly changing. Where is this fixed self in all of that?
I never thought of it like that. But if there's no self, then what exactly is being reborn according to Buddhism?
Well, it's not like a fixed soul or identity that gets transferred from one life to the next. It's more like this stream of consciousness, a continuity of karmic traces and tendencies. Think of it like a river. It's always flowing, always changing, but there's still this like underlying continuity.
So it's like the me of today is a collection of all my past experiences and actions, and that's what shapes the me of tomorrow, even into the next life.
Exactly. It's a flow of causes and conditions, not a fixed entity that shapes our experience.
Okay, that makes more sense. But if there's no self to cling to, why are we so afraid of death?
Because we're so conditioned to identify with things like our bodies, our thoughts, our possessions, the roles we play in life, we see them as mine, and the thought of losing those things triggers fear and anxiety.
So the fear of death is really a fear of loss, losing all the things we cling to as part of our identity.
Exactly. Buddhism suggests that by letting go of these attachments, realizing that everything is impermanent, we can lessen that fear of death.
So if you don't cling to anything, there's nothing to fear losing. That's a pretty radical concept.
It is radical, but it points to a really profound truth. Recognizing the impermanence of all things can lead to a deeper sense of peace and acceptance, even in the face of death.
Yeah, the scholar even suggests that, like, contemplating our own mortality could be a powerful tool for spiritual growth. That seems kind of counterintuitive.
It might seem that way, but reflecting on our impermanence helps us appreciate the preciousness of life. It motivates us to live more fully and meaningfully.
So by acknowledging our mortality, we savor each moment and make the most of the time we have.
Exactly. The scholar even points out that certain Buddhist practices, like meditation on death, can help us get more comfortable with the idea of dying.
Oh, wow. I'm intrigued. How does meditating on death actually work?
It's not about like morbidly dwelling on death. It's about contemplating it with clarity and acceptance. You loosen your grip on attachments to things you're afraid of losing, and you cultivate a deeper appreciation for the present moment.
That sounds challenging, but ultimately beneficial.
It can be challenging, but the rewards are huge. By facing our fear of death head on, we free ourselves from its power.
So by accepting the impermanence of everything, including our own lives, we find a greater sense of peace and freedom.
That's the Buddhist perspective, a really profound message that resonates across cultures and time.
Wow. This whole deep dive has been an incredible journey. It's really challenged my assumptions about life, death, and even the nature of reality.
It's been great exploring these concepts with you.
Before we wrap up, what's like one key takeaway you hope listeners will remember from all of this?
I think the biggest thing is that we have more agency than we realize. Karma isn't some fixed destiny. It's more like a framework for understanding how our choices and actions shape our experience. By cultivating awareness, compassion, and wisdom, we can create positive karma and move towards a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
So it's not about being a passive recipient of fate, but actively shaping our present and future.
Exactly. We're not puppets of our past karma. We're active participants in creating our own reality.
That's incredibly empowering. It gives a whole new meaning to living intentionally.
It really does. Understanding karma gives us the power to make choices that align with our values and aspirations. And that creates this ripple effect of positive change in our own lives and in the world around us.
This deep dive has given me so much to think about. Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating exploration of karma.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, we encourage you to check out the resources we mentioned in this deep dive. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep cultivating that wisdom that leads to a more meaningful and fulfilling life.